if you want to be successful in this space today, you have to invest into the property. You have to do renovations. You have to update cosmetic things. It's got to look good. In 2017, when I was buying these, duplexes and triplexes in downtown Buffalo, I mean, not to like, throw myself under the bus here, but like, we were shopping on Facebook Marketplace and we were, getting deals, slightly used furniture and there's nothing wrong with that, but it just wasn't at the standard that it has to be today. It's a different world. We have to invest. If you're going to get into this space, you got to come in with some money to be willing to invest in the property. And if you don't have it, then you go down in purchase price. You don't over leverage and throw all this capital just into the down payment. You're using that, you're splitting it, or I have some rules of thumb we can talk about, but you're essentially splitting that to where you can invest in the property and also, buy the house too.
Welcome to CRE Radio for influential commercial real estate professionals who work with investors, buyers, and sellers of commercial real estate coast to coast. Whether you're an investor, broker, lender, property manager, attorney, or accountant, we're here to learn from the experts.
Welcome to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CRE Radio. Thanks for joining us. My name is Jay Darren Gross. This is a podcast focused on commercial real estate investment and risk management strategies. Weekly, we have conversations with commercial real estate investors and professionals who provide their experience and insight to help you grow your real estate portfolio. Today's interview is sponsored by Building Insurance and Risk. When you invest in real estate, it pays to work with a real estate investor protection specialist to protect yourself and your investment from catastrophic loss. The experts at Building Insurance and Risk focus on real estate investor protection. They provide you with multiple insurance coverage offers and a side-by-side coverage comparison. To learn more, go to buildinginsurancerisk.com. Today, my guest is Kenny Bedwell. Kenny Bedwell is a seasoned real estate investor and entrepreneur known for helping high-income professionals identify and acquire short-term rental properties that generate strong cash flow. And in just a minute, we're going to speak with Kenny Bedwell about short-term rentals versus boutique hotels. But first, a quick reminder, if you like our show, CRE Radio, there are a couple of things you can do to help us out. You can like, share, and subscribe. And as always, we encourage you to leave a comment. We'd love to hear from our listeners. Also, if you want to see how handsome our guests are, be sure to check out our YouTube channel. You can find us on YouTube at Commercial Real Estate Pro Network. And while you're there, please subscribe. With that, I want to welcome my guest, Kenny Bedwell. Welcome to CRE Radio.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Darren. First off, I just want to clear the air here. I think I have a better voice for radio than a YouTube image, so don't have high hopes on the handsome side.
Hey, gotta have fun with it here. So
yeah, I know that's
he's
funny.
the listener there. So no, it's
caught that. That was good. I love that. I love that. Yeah. So definitely, yeah. Go check out the YouTube channel if you don't believe me.
Go click it down here. So
yeah.
But anyway, well, Kenny, I'm looking forward to our conversation. But before we get started, if you could just take a minute and share with listeners a little bit about your background.
Yeah, for sure. So I have a background in data analytics. I used to work at Citibank for a few years. I was in Buffalo, New York for a while, and really got heavy in the equities market with Citibank. I started real estate investing in 2017, where I bought my first duplex and I house hacked. But instead of long-term renting it, I actually short-term rented it. Where I discovered that it would make about 3 times what long-term rental rates were. And that really kind of picked up momentum and got me started into short-term rentals. I bought another property downtown and another one, and then I picked up some essentially property management clients in and around Buffalo and started to grow my portfolio. COVID hit. And that's where things, for those who follow the Airbnb world, that's where that space really exploded. And that's where I started to go, where else can I invest? What else can I invest into? And from there, I actually created a software for myself and some investor friends too, that help me identify new markets to invest in around the country. So what I do right now is I help investors identify properties around the entire country. I'm not a realtor agent. I'm a consultant, and I have software that helps me do that by looking at specific data of short-term rental rents and housing prices in the markets. And so I applied that, and I've grown my portfolio of short-term rentals. Right now, I have six in and around the country. I've had up to 10, and it's fluctuated based on how I've scaled. And then recently, um, I got into I bought a hotel, a small hotel in downtown New Orleans, and it's complete that process and that world of being a hotel investor is completely different than a short-term rental investor, and I think that's what we're going to actually talk about today. So, yeah,
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Your experience there, and just also the timeline you mentioned, kind of COVID really kind of accelerated the adoption and just kind of the use of things like short-term rentals and also Amazon and all that. Um, so that's awesome. I'm curious, before we jump into the a short-term versus boutique conversation. I'm curious about the software you developed from a standpoint of what are some characteristics that you identify and recognize that are key for a short-term rental or a boutique hotel when you're going through it. I mean, is it population? Is it some sort of an attraction? Is it um,
sure, yeah, yeah. That's a great question. So, number one, when we're looking at a new market, we're looking at what are the traffic drivers. So, why are people going there, and where are they coming from? All of my properties are what I would consider vacation rentals, and they fall under short-term rentals. So short-term rentals are basically when you go and stay at a property for less than 30 days. This could be a traveling nurse, could be, college students' parents visiting them, could be, a family going to visit family at a military base or whatever. Or on the flip side, you have what we call vacation rentals, which are typically rentals in destinations that people vacation to. And so I personally, before, I've kind of mixed between the two. Now I'm only in vacation rentals in the short-term rental space. And so my properties are near tourist attractions, traffic drivers is what I call them. They're within 1 to 2 major cities, and they're drivable. So about 2 to 3 hours at maximum from those major cities. So those are kind of the key components that I'm personally looking for when I'm trying to identify new markets. We have other things like how much money do properties make in the market, and how much do properties cost in that market. Those all, and then obviously the big one for short term rentals is what are the regulatory risks and things that we deal with from that side, and that comes into play. But first, I'm looking at who is coming there and where are they coming from, and building kind of like this investment theory around that.
yeah, that's interesting. Because I would think that especially with your background in data and just all of the data tools that are available, and the ability to go into an investment kind of eyes wide open and have a much stronger sense of success as opposed to just I don't know, I feel pretty good about it,
Yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah,
Makes a lot
yes.
of sense. So
That's yeah. I've got these spreadsheets where short-term rentals are the revenue is very subjective. That's one of the downsides of investing in short-term rentals or vacation rentals too, is you can't say a property is going to generate a certain number, just a certain dollar amount of revenue. Like, oh, this property is going to make $100,000. It won't. It's either going to make above it or below it. And so when we're running those kind of numbers and looking at the data, we're really looking at ranges and comp sets, almost like what realtors do when they're trying to figure out how to price a particular property. They look at comparable properties that have sold in the area, and they get a range, and then they pinpoint a number. And in our spaces, we do something very similar, but we actually run multiple scenarios of, well, if it only makes this, what's my return going to be versus, oh, it's going to make, Y in the best case scenario. What's my return going to be? And so the spreadsheets get a little bit more elaborate compared to, a long-term rental. So.
Yeah, makes sense. So to start with, we've talked a little bit about kind of the how you arrive at a particular location or a town or wherever to operate one of these properties from. As far as a short-term rental, can you identify any kind of physical characteristics in the property itself that are important or that you look for?
Yes. So one of the biggest things that I tell every potential investor, especially new investors, is that with short-term rentals, we have to be willing to invest into the property. We can't, I see a lot, one of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of new investors make is they over leverage themselves on the purchase price and the loan amount. So they go to the lender and the lender says, you're pre-approved. I have $100,000. You're pre-approved for, a $800,000 home or $1 million property, and they go out and they put all $100,000, all the money they have, to the down payment, but they're missing the amenities they have to add to the property. They're missing the design and the decor and the furnishings and the higher level of quality and things we have to add to the property. Because it's not just about buying something and then just throwing it up on Airbnb and hoping it makes sense. If you want to be successful in this space today, you have to invest into the property. You have to do renovations, you have to update cosmetic things. It's got to look good. In 2017, when I was buying these, duplexes and triplexes in downtown Buffalo, I mean, not to like, throw myself under the bus here, but like, we were shopping on Facebook Marketplace and we were, getting deals, slightly used furniture and there's nothing wrong with that, but it just wasn't at the standard that it has to be today. It's a different world. We have to invest. If you're going to get into this space, you got to come in with some money to be willing to invest in the property. And if you don't have it, then you go down in purchase price. You don't over leverage and throw all this capital just into the down payment. You're using that, you're splitting it, or I have some rules of thumb we can talk about, but you're essentially splitting that to where you can invest in the property and also, buy the house too. So.
Got it. So it sounds like the physical characteristics are it's got to be nice. I mean, you want somebody that it's got to be inviting. You can't just go with some sort of a uh, worn out, tired looking kind of place. It's got to be a place people are like excited to be there because they're on vacation. Yeah.
That's the core of it.
Yeah.
What I tell people all the time is we're looking for what we call a moat. So a moat is something that separates us from the competition. It protects us from people coming in and replicating exactly what you have in the short-term rental space and your competition. And so not only do we want a nice, attractive home or a home that we can make nice and attractive. I think you can do both. You can find ones that are already nice and you can turn ones into things that are nice. But we also need to have elements of that property or aspects. So for example, let's go into examples. Location. Okay, there's a finite number of properties that can be, maybe proximity to downtown or proximity to some sort of attraction. Next, we have, views or, sight lines. So, for example, if you're in the mountains and you have that 10 out of 10 view versus you're covered by trees, which one do you think people are going to prefer to stay at in the mountains? The one with the views, right? That's a moat. Finally, or another good example is waterfront access. Are you waterfront, beachfront, lakefront, riverfront? These things add value and make a property desirable, and that's a literal moat of water. And then another really good example is the property type. And we've all seen these ones, online where these crazy cave or tree houses or spaceships or whatever. And then finally, the route that I prefer to go down as I figure out who is the type of people coming to this market, whether it's families or bachelorettes or corporate retreats or whatever, why people are coming to these markets, and I create a space that has the amenities and the design and the functionality that targets those groups. For example, and so I have a 9 bedroom, 7 bath property in Kentucky. that we bought for 1 million. Let's go into numbers. So we bought this property for $1 million. Okay. Why are people going to Kentucky, especially in this one area called Frankfurt? So the Bourbon Trail has exploded in the last 4 years. So the Bourbon Trail, for those of you who listening don't know about it, it's essentially like the Napa Valley of bourbon. There's all these distilleries. I think there's like over 50 distilleries on this route throughout between Louisville and Lexington. And so people, they come down, they drive down, they hit up all these distilleries, and they need somewhere to stay. Who is coming to the Bourbon Trail? Is it young families? No, it's not. It's going to be older folks driving in, usually in their 40s and 50s, and driving down with a group of friends. So when we start to understand that, and we look for property. So one of the big things I was looking for is, okay, we're going to be hosting these larger groups. Okay, well, if they're older, it's not necessarily families, they're going to want their own bathrooms. So one of the key things for me was looking for properties that had a large number of bathrooms so that everyone, pretty much everybody had their own bathroom, didn't have to share. That's huge. That's a plus one, a bonus amenity, that a moat essentially, that other properties, 9 bedrooms, a lot of them had 5 bathrooms or even 4 bathrooms. That's not a lot of bathrooms for 9 bedrooms. So we have 6.5. So it's not a one for one, but that was a big selling point for me on that property. Another thing with that property too is, the space, the land. Could we add more things to that property, like amenities, to improve it? So we did. And we added not just one hot tub, but we added 2 hot tubs. Older adults, larger groups. This place seats 28 people. An 8-person hot tub isn't going to fit 28 people. We added 2 hot tubs. We have mini putt putt. We have a private theater room. It's got a gym in there. It's got a yoga studio. It's got chipping green. There's like frisbee golf. There's so much stuff to do on this property. Yes, families can enjoy that property and enjoy the amenities of it, but it is specifically built and targeted towards older groups. And we get a ton of older groups there. We also get families, but they rave about this property because it was designed specifically for them. And that property, so we bought it for 1 million. We put about $400,000 into it for the design, decor, and amenities. That property generates about $350,000 of gross revenue per year and will net us in our first year. We're about to hit our first year. It will net us about $175,000. So,
Wow. That's impressive. I mean, to and let me ask you, so you clearly had your kind of your key things you were looking for, something that was big,
yep.
some, number of bathrooms. And then it sounds like you kind of recognized your avatar of, client that you're looking for and
hmm
what they would like to do and added all those. Um, how long did it take you from acquisition to first night rental to get all your renovations and all the work done?
Yeah, it took a while. So it took about 4 months, 5 months. Yeah, 5 months. It took us 5 months, just a little over 5 months. So
Gotcha. Well, that's great. That's awesome. I mean, that's an exciting property. That's a win.
yeah,
Um,
it's one of
so
six.
yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
that's I mean that's ka-ching too. I mean, that's those are worthy numbers. Um, and that's impressive. So let me ask you, how does that property and just specific to like location and characteristics as a short-term rental, how does that compare to like a boutique hotel? Would you potentially have the opportunity for a boutique hotel in that same marketplace? Would
I
you?
could, but then everything changes, right?
Mhm.
So boutique hotels or just hotels, they're just small hotels essentially. It's a boutique hotel. Uh, the types of amenities. Remember, you're renting out by the room, and so the who is coming there, you might get these groups, but they don't have the kitchen now, they don't have these other opportunity to have these other amenities. They're renting per room, so usually it's couples, or maybe like a small group or whatever can share a room. But the avatar changes, and so what you add and how you add and the entire real estate deal changes in general. And so with short-term rentals, and this is me personally in my experience, short or vacation rentals, I should say, I see a ton of cash flow in vacation rentals. So for example, the Bourbon Trail property, we're going to net about $175,000. Okay. We bought the property for a million. We put $400,000 into it. It reappraised for 1.6 million. Okay. I never buy at the top of the market. We always try to find a little bit of wiggle room, but we got appreciation of about, I don't know, $200,000. We could try to refinance and pull some of that money out, but that's not really the play. The play is the cash flow. It's making $175,000 net profit after all of our expenses every single year. That is the cash. That's a cash flow play. Okay. The boutique hotel. So the one that we bought in New Orleans, we bought it for 1.5 million. And so 1.5 million, and it was a fixer upper. It's worth about 2.3 once we were done with it. So that's an ARV. And that property will gross in its first year about $650,000. But here's the thing: there's so many expenses with boutique hotels and the operational side and the laundry. I mean, this one's a 14 room one, so we're constantly doing laundry. I mean, we have like 3 laundry machines in our space that we're just constantly doing laundry on. That the net revenue on that thing is only going to be like $70,000. And so it's not a cash flow play, it's an appreciation play because in one more year, once we get our tax return for this boutique hotel next year, we can refinance that property and then turn that $1.5 million property into a $4 million property based on the revenue that it's generating, the NOI and the gross revenue. They're not looking at the net, they're looking at the NOI, the banks are. And so with short-term rentals, they're considered residential real estate. They only appraise based on what homes are selling, residential homes are selling, not based on revenue. So that Kentucky property, I can net $175,000 all day, every day, well, not all day, for the year. And, but I can't go get it refinanced based on the revenue. A boutique hotel, I can. And it is an appreciation play. So I go from 1.5 to 4 million. That's a huge amount of money. That's the play, and that's why I'm doing it. I'm not doing it to make any cash flow at all. That's why I have all the other properties that are cash flowing. So the strategy and the mindset changes on who and why and in the investment style when you go from short-term rental to boutique hotel.
I love the distinction there because I think that a lot of people when they get into real estate, they're probably coming from traditional investments, stocks, bonds, whatever the market kind of thing, and not always understanding the different plays you can have in real estate.
Oh,
And I
it's
think,
beautiful. I
yeah,
love it. I mean, I sit down, like one of the things I do with a lot of people is just educating them on, look, with real estate, you can get cash flow, you can get tax savings, you can get appreciation, you get equity pay down. There's all these benefits, and depending on the type of investment that you do, benefits you more than others. And so it just depends on your goals. Why are you investing and what are you trying to do? If you're trying to leave a job, like when I got started, I wanted to leave my corporate job. And so I was really, trying to double down and snowball, and that's cash flow. I really got a cash flow if I'm trying to leave, because cash flow is the cash that's in your pocket at the end of the day. But now, as I'm getting all this cash flow, I'm like, crap, I have a huge tax burden. Like I got the builders and I was like, man, I'm going to have to pay an additional $50,000 to the government. I don't want to pay that. So I've got a tax strategist, and he's like, go buy more real estate. And we're strategically buying based off of, these preferences. We're being smart about it. We're not buying to lose money or anything, but I mean, this is where that appreciation versus, tax savings versus cash flow. And you get all these benefits of real estate, but it can vary based on the asset class and what you decide to invest in. So.
yeah, no, totally. So, on the short-term rental, tell me about any kind of zoning issues that you're aware of or run into, or that are potential type issues for you with local municipalities.
Oh man. Yeah. It varies across the entire country. Um every property is unique. Some of them are, especially and this is why I prefer vacation rentals, because if you're in a market that is a vacation destination where people are coming, that helps their economy, they're expecting tourists, the regulation is going to be favorable. And one of the things I tell people all the time is the most dangerous type of short-term rental you can invest into is a market that has no regulation at all. Because it's only a matter of time before they decide what the regulation is going to be. Short-term rentals have been around for hundreds of years. And fun fact, I'm a short-term rental nerd, so I can spit these things out. But the first vacation rental market was in Portland, Maine. I think it was 1710 is the exact date. Someone can fact check me if they want, but that's the first vacation rental market ever. So they've been around for centuries, yet they haven't been as regulated until as recently because of tools like Airbnb and VRBO. And so there's all these changes going on. And so when I go and invest in the properties I'm looking for in the markets, I'm looking to be in number one vacation markets. And then number two, they've already established some sort of rules that work for what I'm trying to do, that protect, because I agree we need to have some sort of rules and regulation. We can't just STR anywhere and everything. But there are things that it's like, yes, you can STR here, and just here's the groundwork, here's the framework for what you need to do. And that's what helps me feel confident going in that I'm not going to have any potential issues, because once they start collecting those tax dollars, those city officials, they're not going to be changing up a whole lot of other things. They might increase rates, sure, they can increase percentages of what they tax, but they've kind of established, they have a foundation for their rules. And I rarely see them get even more extreme. Usually they start to ease off the gas pedal once they've kind of put things on, they created their framework for their rules. But that's really what I start with. So I invest in places that are actually pretty regulated. I invest in states like New York. I'm all over the hotel is in New Orleans. That place is insane with, with the regulation. Texas and Dallas and I'm in Arizona, and then I mentioned Kentucky. Kentucky and North Carolina aren't as bad. That's where I have a properties as well. But New York is pretty strict, but I love it. It scares other investors away, and it's not that hard. You just have to jump through a few other hula hoops, do some things that are a little ridiculous, but it's easy to do. And you now have a legal short-term rental that's protected by the municipality and in a really good vacation market.
Yeah. I like that strategy from a standpoint of, you know, minimal potential surprises.
Yeah,
Um, as opposed to, hey, there are no rules, only to find out that you are the guinea pig. You're the poster
I've
child for the reason why there are going to be rules.
exactly,
So, yeah.
exactly. I've been time and time again. I've seen it happen in some of these even markets where I'm like, they'll never pass any rules here, and they do it because the I don't know, the rule of thumb for investing is if there's an area of high returns, which is what we saw with short-term rentals, it was really easy. You could throw anything up on Airbnb and make money from it. More and more people will jump onto it until it's just too many people in the market, it hits equilibrium. And that's what happens in these towns, and they have, parties, and you hear all the bad stuff on, about Airbnb, and then these regulations drop, and I sure people can get grandfathered in, but that's not always guaranteed.
Yeah.
So what do you do at that point? I've seen people that actually happened in Buffalo. They just dropped the hammer and made up some rules and kicked a lot of people out. And I kind of saw it coming. And so I exited just in time. But I mean, there were people who had, 10, 15 houses that were strictly short-term rentals, and that's it. They're done in one day, and they're like, this is
Yeah.
my business and my livelihood. And so it's a scary thing when we are in areas where they can do that and create rules that just shut you down in a day. So gotta be
Yeah.
careful.
So I want to ask you about operations. I do you I mean, do you also operate the property? Do you have staff that operates the hotel? Do you have staff that
Yeah.
operates your short-term rentals, or do you sub that out, or how do you do that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think that's one of the biggest differences between the two is, operations. I think short-term rental owners can learn a lot from hotels. Hotels have a very established way of doing things, and the technology is a little bit further ahead than with short-term rentals. But let's break down the differences and what's the same. So in the hotel, we have full-time staff on site. we have someone at the front desk, we have cleaners, and occasionally we have security during the crazy it's downtown New Orleans near the French Quarter, so it gets wild at night, so we have security sometimes just in case nothing's happened. They're just there to scare people away. But we that there it's people on payroll, and there's over 25 different websites that the hotel is on, for the property management. And there's a whole system and finances, and the pricing systems are different. Like it's pretty elaborate setup. Now there's all this great technology, like I was mentioning earlier, hotels that have set up where you make a change to anything about your hotel and it blasts it and updates all 25 sites at the same time. Whereas short-term rentals, we have a few platforms we're on. I don't have any full-time staff. I hire virtual assistants that help with guest messaging. There are companies that manage my pricing for me, so I don't do any of my pricing. I just deal with, and I do have a property management software that's pretty straightforward, but it connects to Airbnb and VRBO. I get a booking, people get automated messaging, my cleaners get updated, they're tied into it. I try to automate as much as I can because I personally hate operating. That's not my zone of genius. That's not what I specialize in. I am more about finding deals, creating deals, getting those opportunities. And so the operations part and running it, I try to hand off as much as I can. But in the short-term rental space, it's expensive to hire a property manager. It's about 20%, 25% they'll charge. However, there's enough tools coming out now and services that you can, like I said, I hire a virtual assistant. She does all of my messaging. So when a guest, if they have any questions, they get guidebooks, things like that, tools, and we have resources at the property. But if there's random things like, hey, what's the code for this, or how do we, what's your favorite restaurant or whatever, and they don't feel like reading the guidebook, the my virtual assistant will respond on my behalf and say, hey, yeah, this is it's our favorite restaurant. You got to check it out. And if the guest needs any help, she can actually call. And if there's an issue at the property, she can call the handyman. The handyman's on staff, and not permanent staff, but like contract wise, and we can give them a call. And so anyway, there's lots of little ways to do it, but with hotels, you're pretty much hiring someone full time. The cleaners are full time, for the most part. The staff at the desk is full time, and they're handling pretty much everything there. And then we're sitting back and looking at the financials on a monthly basis. Whereas short term rentals, you're a little more involved. It's a single family home. You don't have the luxury of going and trying to hire someone full time. And if you did, it wouldn't make sense financially. So it changes the game based off of what you're doing and how you're doing it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, so what about I guess during like the pandemic, like you started, or when we started, we talked about how everybody was getting into the short-term rentals,
Hmm.
and it was the popular thing, and nobody could do any wrong. And there was people with money, and they couldn't go to work, so they were traveling, and seemed like people were turning anything they could into a short-term rental kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, since that time, things have settled down here a little bit. Uh, do you are there lessons that were learned or lessons that you see or saw that you can share with the audience that or that you refined or you no longer do or that you did or you don't do or that you saw people do that no longer works
Yeah,
for the short-term rentals?
absolutely. I so the biggest lesson that going back to the beginning is, we number one, today you have to be willing to invest into your properties. You have to add the amenities. You can't cheap out. You can't, throw in basic stuff and expect that to be successful and stand out. You'll get crushed by the competition. It's very competitive. I mean, the market's maturing. And that it's all revolving around how we buy today for short-term rentals revolves around the guest experience. For example, a few years ago, I had a property. It was a really really cool property. It was built in 1864, in downtown Buffalo, and it was like this really cool duplex. It was in a great location. And we could host. I think we could host. What was the number? 12. I think it was 10 or 12 people in this duplex. It was upper lower. We rent out the whole space, and historic house, beautiful. We did a cool job on the inside. But the problem we were having was the parking. Guests were complaining at a small driveway could fit maybe two cars, and that's it. And when you're thinking like 12 people, you're probably going to have, especially like driving and everything, most of the time people had three or four cars. And so we were having lots of problems with guests complaining about parking, and that was dinging us in the reviews. And I came to this realization that although this was a cool property in a good location, it was time to move on. So a few years earlier, when I started it, it was great. No one complained. But the guest experience has evolved. People are wanting more and demanding more because the quality has improved and they can get more. And so, with that in mind, I decided to move on. And the crazy part about it too is when I moved on, I was able to sell it for a massive profit because it had appreciated. And I was able to take that and reinvest into bigger properties and find more strategic properties that fit what the current guest expectation level is. And so my properties are always in the top 5 and even 1%, depending on the market, because we're buying based on guest experience. Whereas before, it was just buying something that was a good priced property that, that looked cool that we could throw up on Airbnb or throw on Airbnb.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. So I got to ask you, when you travel, do you stay in Airbnbs yourself? Do you try and go get the experience and pick up some tips, ideas from others?
Yes. It depends on where I go and what I do. If I'm traveling by myself, I'll just stay in a hotel. Which is actually really I think short-term rental hosts should do both. And the reason why is because hotels are always evolving. They're always adding things and the experience is also changing. And I think that short-term rental hosts can learn from hotels as well and the stuff that they're doing and see things that they're putting into their rooms and the service and the quality and things that they're doing and apply that to their short-term rentals to find success. So I do like to stay in hotels um on top of air when I travel with my family, we stay in Airbnbs all the time. So it's tough though because as a host and as someone who has lots of experience in the space, not being overly critical when I go stay at someone's property and just being like, if they ask for feedback, I'll give it to them. But I'll do both, especially with my family because, and I think that's where Airbnbs are going to be very successful in the future is these families groups that want to stay together. Hotels can't provide that experience. And so when we want to, like when this summer we wanted to go to the Outer Banks of North Carolina with my parents and my family, and my whole family went, and we could stay in one house under one roof, and we had meals together, could break bread together and share the pool together and everything. It was very private experience and very memorable. My 4-year-old toddler, she woke up the other morning. I mean, this trip was like months ago, and she woke up the other morning. She's like, I want to go to the beach. I want to go to that house again, out of the blue. I mean, and those are the types of experiences that I think Airbnbs can provide that hotels, normal hotels like think Marriott or Hilton can't do yet. Maybe resorts can, but anyway, so that's typically what I do. So
That's a good way to use that and like, I guess kind of keep aware of what people are doing and understand what
stay on
the
top of it.
competition looks like. Yeah, that's good. So, hey, Kenny, if we could, I'd like to shift gears here for a second. As I mentioned before we got started, by day I'm an insurance broker. And as such, I work with my clients to assess risk and determine what to do with the risk. And there's three strategies we typically consider. We first look to see if there's a way we can avoid the risk. If that's not an option, we look to see if there's a way we can minimize the risk. And if we cannot avoid nor minimize the risk, we look to see if we can transfer the risk. And that's what an insurance policy is. It's a risk transfer vehicle. And as such, I like to ask my guests if they can look at their own situation. It could be your clients,
Hmm.
investors, federal money, the Fed, municipalities, rules, whatever you see that you consider and identify as the biggest risk. And
Sure.
again, for clarification, Well, I'm an insurance broker. I'm not necessarily looking for an insurance related answer. And so if you're willing, I'd like to ask you, Kenny Bedwell, what is the biggest risk?
So, the biggest risk, I think that the answer I was going to give you originally, and I kind of talked about it, so I'll move on from it, but it's regulation. Regulation changes, you're in trouble. That is a huge risk to any investment, but the a risk that I don't really hear often talked about in our space is actually safety, guest safety. So I'll give you a stat. This is a real stat by there's a guy, Justin Ford. He's a safety expert in the short-term rental space. Uh, Guests are so people are more 10 times more likely to have an accident in a short-term rental than in a hotel. And so there is an inherent amount of risk with hosting people in a property, especially people on vacation. 70% of people that stay at short-term rentals admitted that they like to, drink when they're on vacation. There's nothing wrong with that, obviously, but like 70% of people, adults who are going and staying at a property are going to drink. And when alcohol is involved and there's the that increases the chances and the risk of things happening. And I personally too, I mean, I could go into a whole story with you that we could do a whole nother podcast episode on, where I've been in lawsuits before of short-term rentals for slip and falls and other things, where people were not being careful. And I swear to this day, I would love to get the data and the metrics on this, how low people's IQs drop when they go on vacation because they drop pretty fast. It's crazy some of the questions I get where it's like, yeah, just turn that on or press that button that says on and you're good to go. Like people don't really think critically when they're on vacation. And I mean, why would you? You're kind of putting everything on pause and taking a break. But that increases risk of accidents actually happening. And so I know you kind of mentioned like, oh, about it, it's not about insurance, but for short-term rental hosts, it really is. It is very, very, I'm a testament to this personally. It's very important that you get really good insurance, because it can save you on a rainy day. And you also need to make sure that you work with your insurance company and know, if you need to have extra signage or, the smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, fire extinguishers, are they easily accessible? All of my fire extinguishers are mounted in places that you can visibly see. And I've got multiple. I put extra safety things in all of my properties because it's just to protect people, because the likelihood of that happening is so much higher than just a long-term rental or someone staying at a hotel. And so all these things are super critical. And the last thing that you want, this happens every single year. It happens. Find out, a child drowned in your pool. That's a big lawsuit on your hands. And so it's so important that we have these protections, especially short-term rental hosts and hotel owners as well, that protect us in the event of any of these worst case scenarios happen, because they really do. And we can't, turn a blind eye to that. Other people happen and say, oh, that won't happen to me.
Yeah, no, that's that's good input. I know the underwriters usually kind of the fun police, but there's data that kind of backs up some of that, and I think a lot of times it's about having controls in place.
Yeah.
Something that can guard against somebody getting hurt, or that there's some sort of a method that's a practice. It's not just well, if we try not to keep people from doing anything they don't want to do, but just yeah, that's good input. I really appreciate that, and definitely some words of wisdom. Kenny, where can the listeners go if they'd like to learn more or connect with you?
Yeah, for sure. So, if you like to connect with me, the easiest way, just go on social media at Kenny_Bedwell. It's spelled as it sounds. Also, my company and my website is STR Insights, INSIGHTS.com. So strinsights.com that's our company website. But feel free to reach out to me if you're interested in investing in short-term rentals and you have questions. You're like, where do I start? I have lots of free content. And just reach out and say, hey, Kenny, where do I start? And I'll send you in the right direction. So,
Awesome. Well, Kenny Bedwell, I cannot say thanks enough for taking the time to talk today. I've
Yeah, that's
enjoyed
great.
it. I've learned a lot, and look forward to doing it again soon.
Thanks for having me.
All right. For our listeners, if you like this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Remember, the more you know, the more you grow. That's all we've got this week. Until next time, thanks for listening to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CREPN Radio.
You're listening to CREPN Radio for influential commercial real estate professionals. For more information on this or any of our guests, like us on Facebook, CREPN Radio.